We are live, sir.
Hello, hi, and good afternoon. Welcome to this session of Live This Week. Today is an important session on COVID-19 second wave. We have so many doubts, questions that we need answers to, and we have with us Dr. Nandini Sethuraman, MD from Apollo Hospitals, to share with us all the information and clear all our doubts. I request you all to sit through the presentation and go through whatever information that she has got to share with us. And finally, at the end of it, in case your questions are still not unanswered, do share us your questions and we'll try our best to get it all answered for you. And let me introduce the guest of the day for the day. Dr. Nandini is presently working as Associate Consultant, Department of Microbiology, Apollo Hospitals. She's a published author. She has recently published Interpreting Diagnostic Tests for SARS-CoV-2, which I think is COVID-19, in the Journal of American Medical Association. So that is one of her primary achievements in context of today's talk. So join me in welcoming our guest of the day. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Gopi. So we'll straight away go for the presentation. I understand there'll be so many questions and I want to allot enough time to address all of them. No matter how much I put in my presentation, it's not going to cover all those questions. So yeah, please pay attention and then I'll be happy to take a lot of questions at the end. I'll have a quick presentation now. So I'm not going to talk much about generally how the virus came into being, what is the epidemiology and everything, because all that has been talked about a lot in the last 1 year. So we will go straight to what is the current issue. We have a few issues that are burning at the moment. We have a huge second surge of infections and we have vaccines available. We have a lot of new vaccines coming up that will be useful in our country. And we have these new mutations and variants that are cropping up. So these three are the burning topics for today, which I will try to cover briefly over the next few slides. I'm just waiting for the, yeah. So this is basically the picture that you're seeing every day in the news for the last 2-3 days, especially. So India is currently the top country in terms of total new cases occurring in a day. So although our first wave that you see here in this picture, in fact, in the next picture better, we had a small wave, we had a big wave around August, September, but what we are seeing now is unprecedented. We've never had more than 180,000 cases in a day. Yesterday it has of course touched 2 lakh cases, new cases in a day. So compared to the other countries that experienced big waves, we're almost nearing what USA saw earlier part of February, that is about 250,000 a day, and the rate at which it's going is quite scary. So even if you look at the number of deaths that we are seeing daily, it's almost touching the all-time high that we saw around September. And if you see the steepness of that curve, it only looks like it's going higher. And we have not yet seen the effects of the second wave in terms of deaths, because usually people die 2-3 weeks after the infection starts. So we are not yet seeing the full force of the second wave in terms of deaths. So that's something we are bracing for. So if you look at individual states, Maharashtra, of course, ranks highest. Almost 1/3 of all new cases per day are right now being seen in Maharashtra. This was half of the cases before, now it's become 1/3. So you can just imagine how the other states have started contributing cases overall. Delhi as a single city is actually reporting about 17,000 cases. Uttar Pradesh, where last wave we did not see too many cases, is now reporting 20,000 cases in a day, and we're still awaiting number of cases to show up in the areas where the Kumbh Mela is happening. So if you look at in terms of vaccination, of course, India is doing quite well so far. Every day we are almost vaccinating about 3 million people a day, but this has kind of reached a static. But in places like Maharashtra, where the cases are also rising so high, vaccinations are really ramped up. But the problem is now in those states there is a shortage. So the place where I'm presenting from, that is Tamil Nadu, we have not yet seen a shortage yet. We are still able to vaccinate whoever asks for it. If they're eligible, that is if they're over the 45 age group, but the case is not the same across the country, however. So the question is, why did this happen at all? So early part of this year, January, February, we were kind of complacent. Probably we are seeing the end of the pandemic, the beginning of the end of the pandemic rather. But then, and over the last week or so, we're just seeing this shoot up, right? So there are several reasons why. There is no single answer to why this happened. The most probable reasons I have listed here. There is a new variant, or rather a very old variant that is currently at play, that is the human behavior. So over the last 2-3 weeks, all over the country, there have been several events which have triggered people to completely reduce their guard and go out there unmasked. Lot of social gatherings happening. Social gatherings had been happening even in December, January, but probably over the last 2-3 weeks, it has been completely unsafe. People are not following masking, people are not following social distancing, and whatever happens in 2 weeks, the effects of that in terms of COVID, we see at the end of the incubation period, right? So 2-3 weeks. So that is what we are seeing now. Probably the herd immunity that had come into play. Recently, there was a sero survey, a third sero survey from the ICMR, and the CSIR, which showed that almost 40 to 50% of the population had been exposed to COVID, either in terms of true infection or in terms of asymptomatic infection. But probably that herd immunity is waning now. This is sort of expected with all coronaviruses, where immunity does not really last beyond 2 to 3 weeks. 3 to 6 months. So probably this year that herd immunity has waned off. Recently, this morning, I saw a study which showed that people who were seropositive earlier, 20% of them right now don't have antibodies. So 20% have lost their antibodies. Other 80% still have it, but it just goes to show that stepwise there may be a decline in immunity. And then this Peltzman effect, many of you would have read it in the road traffic accident context, but basically there is a lot of false sense of security that the COVID pandemic is over in India, and COVID somehow did not cause so many deaths in India, and we're probably in the safe zone now. Many people also, after receiving the first dose, now it's April 2nd week, mostly people other than healthcare workers and frontline workers have only received the first dose of the vaccine. They generally tend to completely, get their guard down after the first dose. They suddenly, yesterday I got my dose, so today I'm traveling. So that sort of thing a lot of people have done and contracted COVID. So the protection due to the vaccination only kicks in after 2 to 3 weeks of the second dose. So you can't really think that the one dose is enough to protect you from a COVID disease. And of course, we are seeing new variants of the virus. I'll be covering some of these variants in detail. Viruses tend to mutate, especially RNA viruses like coronaviruses. Some of those mutations make the virus a little more able to survive in this context, survive in the presence of vaccines, be more transmissible and cause more severe disease. So that is what we are probably seeing even in our country. New variants are taking up a major chunk of the new cases that are being seen every day. And of course, this year, a lot more testing is happening compared to last year. So this may be able to magnify the size of the pandemic, size of the second wave, but it is not the only reason. We are definitely, even in the hospital, we are seeing that there is a sudden surge of people coming in for with symptoms, for testing and for admissions. Many states like Gujarat, Maharashtra are already witnessing that they don't have enough beds. People are being turned away from hospitals. It's a very horrible situation. We are not yet seeing this in Tamil Nadu, but then we have to brace for it. Is the second wave more severe? So this is another question that we are all thinking about. Some of the things that we are seeing with the second wave are slightly more distinct compared to the first wave. That is, we are seeing a lot more younger individuals who are coming in for hospital admissions. There is a certain concern. This has been voiced in many newspapers. Some of these media outlets are actually going ahead and saying that RT-PCR is missing out on cases, and also there are a lot of cases among those who have been vaccinated. So the distinction they are not making on whether they only received the one dose or the two doses. Many of these are probably just spillover effects of the overall size of the epidemic this time. See, so there are so many more lakhs of people getting infected overall. So obviously, even if it's a small proportion, even if younger individuals are only a small proportion of those total cases, they are probably seeking more hospital admission. So it's basically just, you know, the size of the pandemic that is probably showing these things. Are we missing cases on RT-PCR? This is probably also not true. RT-PCR is, of course, the gold standard test, but it is not an absolute test. It will not pick up 100% of the cases. There are a lot of factors which determine if an RT-PCR will be positive. So inherently, the RT-PCR is not the most sensitive test. It will still miss out about 25 to 30% of the cases. Just again, this is a factor of the magnitude. There is so many more cases. We are actually reporting so many positives, which means that probably these new strains, even if they are actually there, are not being missed on the RT-PCR. So, so that is the problem of the second wave. How do we prevent getting infected in this second wave? So all those things that you did even last year in 2020 are exactly what you need to be doing now. It's just that anyone around you, you have to be you have to get your guard up. Anyone around you who is not masked, if you are in a room together with someone else, you have to get your masks up. So masking is the most important preventive measure that will help you from getting this infection. Even if you've had a COVID infection, even if you had 1 dose, 2 doses of the vaccine, continue to be protecting yourself and those in your family from COVID. So wear a mask. What kind of mask doesn't really matter. It can just be a 3-ply cloth mask. It will give you enough protection in the community. But what is important is that it is comfortable and it's possible to wear for longer periods of time. So in a day, you can't be changing more than 2 masks in a day. So, and N95s, if you use, many of you who use N95s will know it's very difficult to use beyond 3-4 hours. It's very, very suffocating. And then you ultimately end up taking it off. So if you're more comfortable with a triple layer cloth mask, if it's going to stay over your nose and mouth, please use that instead of any other mask. Hand hygiene, so droplet is the first most important mode of transmission. The second most important is with direct contact with patients, with people who may be infected. So hand hygiene is the second most important one. Wash hands frequently, many times in a day. Use alcohol-based hand sanitizers. They're probably even more useful in disinfecting, because alcohol as such is a better killer of the virus than hand washing. And hand washing too many times will also damage your skin. So alcohol-based hand rubs are as good or even better than hand washing. And then avoid touching shared objects. So more and more now we have evidence to show that objects in general are not very, very important in terms of transmission vehicles. What is more scary is being in the same room with other people, right? That is indoor transmission by droplets is the most important mode of transmission. But of course, avoid touching shared objects is an added layer of precaution. Hand hygiene doesn't mean that you just, apply the hand rub and it's over. You make sure that every surface of your hand is covered in the hand rub, and then you spend about 20 to 30 seconds disinfecting all the surfaces of your hand. Only then you can be absolutely sure that your hand hygiene is perfect, especially fingertips. Fingertips are commonly missed in the way that we wash hands like this, and the webs between your fingers, the back side of your hands, all these areas are commonly missed when you don't do a proper hand hygiene. So you make sure you will find a lot of literature in the WHO of how to hand rub. So this is very, very important. Environmental cleaning and disinfection is, yes, it is important. It is not the most important thing. Sanitizing like crazy is not really shown to be of much use. But yes, you can use your regular cleaning supplies. You don't need anything new. You don't need a super disinfectant specifically for COVID-19. As such, outside the body, COVID is quite harmless. If it's been out for a few hours, it's not going to be much virulent in its ability to cause infections. Social distancing is one thing that we have completely neglected over the last 2-3 months. I don't mean by social distancing that you just stay 6 feet away from anyone else. It's important to avoid crowding in general, avoid going to any place which has crowds. So that is the basic idea of social distancing. There is a lot of virtual platforms available. I'm able to talk to 500 of you, I'm told. So that's just fantastic. So use these new tools instead of meeting people. Just delay it a little more. I'm sure you've already delayed it by this time. Everybody's frustrated, but then the world has become so much smaller with these virtual modes available. Social distancing needs to be done again. Even if we don't have lockdowns, I don't expect that there will be lockdowns now because the economy took a huge hit last year, and we have not yet recovered from those wounds yet. So what will be good is a change in an attitude of the people themselves. So masking, avoid going to crowds, avoid going to theaters, avoid going to restaurants, any place which is completely indoors and there are other people there. Avoid that. Order takeout, that's absolutely safe. Ordering parcel, no problem. You can do the contactless delivery that all these providers are doing. That is absolutely safe, no problem there. If you have to be indoors, make sure that it's very well ventilated. So poorly ventilated indoors have been shown, even if it's 2 tables away in a restaurant which is in some basement which is not well ventilated, you can still get infection from someone 2 tables away. That has been shown clearly in scientific studies. So even if you have to stay indoors for prolonged periods of time, like 1 or 2 hours, you need to make sure that it is well ventilated, either in terms of a lot of windows and fans, which make sure that the air is continuously exchanged, or you have an air handling unit which is capable of bringing in fresh air every few times in an hour. So 6 to 10 air exchanges per hour is a safe safe number of air changes that will take out bad air every few minutes. So you should know what are the risks associated with commonly done activities. So being in the vicinity of someone within 6 feet, more than 6 feet is considered low risk. Talking to someone face to face with a mask on, low risk. If you're just going for a morning walk, jogging, cycling past someone, you're not standing around taking off your mask and talking to them, it is still low risk. If it's a well ventilated space, it is low risk. So all these activities you can still continue to do. The higher risk ones I said are the indoor spaces, indoor workplaces, parties and weddings where there are a lot of people indoors, especially restaurants. Again, public bathrooms are common areas where there are a lot of people aggregating within a small closed space. All these are high risk activities which you need to avoid, even though you may be masked, right? So, but of course, to top it all, the most important measure is the availability of vaccines. We'll go through the available ones at this point. The first problem that people have with vaccines, of course, now it is almost completely dispelled. The speed at which COVID vaccines came out was really spectacular. We have never seen something like this in the history of humanity, where within a year of a new disease appearing, we have so many vaccines available to us already. So the usual process of any vaccine development, which takes about 5 to 10 years, is the preclinical trials, which are done in animals, and then phase 1 trials are done in a small number of people just to see if it is safe. And then if it is safe in the phase 1, then they go for phase 2, in which the vaccine is given to hundreds of people. And then it is scaled up in phase 3, where thousands of 20,000, 30,000 people are involved. And that is where they actually study the efficacy of the vaccine. So apart from is it just safe? Even water is safe, saline is safe, but is this vaccine able to prevent disease? So usually how this happens is the groups of people, thousands of people will be assigned to a vaccine group, and an equal number will be assigned to a placebo group to whom the vaccine is not given. And over a period of say 6 months to 8 months, they are followed up to see how many of them get COVID-19, how many of them develop disease in spite of the vaccination. And all of these vaccines that are now licensed for use have shown a sizable efficacy in large scale phase 3 trials. Right. So, but what happened with COVID vaccine development was that we had a lot of research to already rely on. So when the initial SARS epidemic happened, and when the Ebola epidemics happened, these were all short-lived thanks to a lot of the social behavior mediations that were done. We were not so lucky with COVID-19, but at that time also there was a lot of vaccine research done with these new technologies like mRNA vaccines, adenovirus-based vaccines, and SARS being very closely related to the COVID virus, we had quite a bit of research to fall back on. So that is the reason why we were able to fast track these trials. But rest assured that there were no shortcuts taken, as in safety was not compromised anywhere through these trials. So we have a lot of vaccines now available to us. I will focus on the ones that are available in India and the ones that will soon be available in India. So that there are two vaccines which are currently available. 70 to 80% of the vaccine pool out there is Covishield. So Covishield is originally the AstraZeneca Oxford University vaccine, which has been for which the Serum Institute has been contracted to mass produce it, and it's not only being able to provide doses for India, they're also exporting outside. So the phase 3 trials for this were completed in the UK and Brazil, and a smaller phase 3 trial was done even in India. And even now, right now, the most recent one, it has completed a trial in the US and shown 82% efficacy, even against the UK variant, actually. So 2 doses are required. There was a lot of confusion to the duration between the 2 doses. Initially, the company said it's going to be 4 weeks, but then WHO also saw, and a lot of other studies also showed that probably increasing the interval between the 2 doses. So basically, the second dose will boost the effect of the first dose. So if the interval between the 2 doses is increased, they saw that it's probably more effective. So it's a good strategy when you apply it to public health systems also. So if you give at least 1 dose of the vaccine to a large population, and then at least the 1 dose efficacy will be still around 50%. I told you that you're fully vaccinated only after 2 weeks of the second dose, but first dose alone also has some amount of protection. It's not absolute, but then in terms of public health, to bring down total number of infections, total deaths due to the infection, it's still good to vaccinate with the first dose to a lot of people in one go, and then wait around 6 to 8 weeks for the second dose. So 6 to 8 weeks is an optimum duration. Up to 12 weeks is also okay. That's 3 months is also good if you can delay the second dose. The vaccine is very easily stored at 2 to 8 degrees, that is at the refrigerator temperature. In India, it's easily possible to store at this temperature. Some of the other vaccines need to be stored at sub-zero, which is actually a little difficult. The second vaccine that is currently available, about 20% of the doses that are available in the country are Covaxin. So Covaxin is an entirely indigenous vaccine which was developed by Bharat Biotech in a purified virocell. It's a cell culture model basically. The phase 3 clinical trials had begun a little late because the vaccine development itself took time, but the phase 3 trials had begun in December. Recently, we had some interim data that it is able to provide around 80% protection, but that is not the final data yet available to us. We are still awaiting that. But what the interim results also show is that it is completely safe and it has been licensed for approval. More recently, India has made a way for foreign-made vaccines to come because there is definitely some shortage of both Covishield and Covaxin in the country. So at this point, the government finally decided that it is time to bring in the other players also into the market and not just the Indian-made ones. So this is just a paper cutting. I have no disclosures with any of the ads in this slide. So I just made this sort of comparative so that when these vaccines become available to us, you will know which one is the best for you. So the Pfizer and Moderna are probably ones that will definitely come to India. So these vaccines have been available in the US, UK, many of the developed countries for a long time now, for about 4 to 5 months now. Both of these are mRNA vaccines. The Pfizer and Moderna are both mRNA vaccines. This is a new technology actually, never been used before, but we have 5-6 months of experience with both of these vaccines now. And in the real world, they have been shown to be very effective, not only against the wild type variant, but also against the UK variant specifically. That is the most prevalent one in the US and UK. So it has been shown to be effective against the UK variant also. So efficacy data are very, very good, excellent data. That is 94 to 95% of people who get the vaccine will not develop COVID compared to those who don't get the vaccine. So phase 3 trials have been published and very robust data is available for both of these. They are probably going to be expensive. I am told that for 2 doses it is around $30 to $35. So that will be a limitation for large scale application in India. But of course, if people can afford to take it, they can definitely buy these vaccines. I've already alluded to Covishield and Covaxin, and then probably the other two vaccines that are going to be available to us is the Novavax. So Novavax has been taken up by the Serum Institute. They will be able to mass produce it also. So this is a protein subunit vaccine, again for which 2 doses can be taken. Phase 3 trials have been published which show about 89% efficacy. So this is also an extremely good vaccine. Protein subunit is also an old technique. It's not a new technique. For example, your hepatitis B vaccine is also a protein subunit vaccine. So that kind of issue is also not there with this vaccine. The other one is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This is also going to be available soon in India. This is also a US produced vaccine, which is an adenovirus vector, similar to the Covishield vaccine. But the biggest advantage of this vaccine is that it is a single dose vaccine. It's a single dose vaccine which can prevent 66% of moderate to severe COVID-19 and can 100% prevent against severe disease specifically. But the problem with this vaccine, which has been seen recently, is again this clotting issue. I'll come to that. The thing is that it is definitely effective against the UK variant, not so much against the South African and Brazil variants. The other vaccine that will soon be available in India is the Sputnik V vaccine. It is a Russian vaccine. Even though it's a Russian vaccine, in fact, it has been shown to be highly effective. 91.4%. That is the efficacy data that we have from a paper in Lancet. This is also an adenovirus vector vaccine, slightly different from Covishield, that the 2 doses are manufactured in such a way that they're different from each other. So with Covishield, it's the same, right? You get exactly the same thing for your second dose that you got for the first dose. But for Sputnik V, the 2 doses are slightly different. So immunologically, this makes a little bit of a difference when given to a large number of individuals. The other vaccines that are listed here are some of the Chinese vaccines. Probably we won't see them in India very soon. So Moderna and Pfizer both shown to be 95% effective. A fragment of the mRNA of the virus is actually the constituent of this vaccine. This mRNA is only capable of producing the viral spike protein. So spike protein is the piece of protein that sticks out of the COVID virus that you've seen in many of the pictures. So this is the part which is most important in inducing an immune response. So the first point of contact for the virus with the human body is the spike protein. So if you have antibodies to the spike protein, if you have an immune response to the spike protein, you are basically protected from the virus totally. So that is the idea behind these vaccines. There is no way that they will interfere with your genetic material. So that is one thing to remember. All these vaccines have a few side effects that are common to them, and they are absolutely not a cause for concern. So you will definitely have some fever with chills, pain in the injection site can be there, and these things can last about 2 to 3 days also, but it is nothing to worry. Rarely there can be headache, nausea, vomiting and muscle soreness also. So the idea of mass vaccination is to achieve what's known as herd immunity. So if you have enough number of people in a population, about 70% of them have been covered either by natural infection or by vaccination, they will continue to prevent infection even in the people who have not been vaccinated. That doesn't mean that you should think that somebody else getting vaccinated will protect me. It's important that already there will be 30% of the population who cannot take the vaccine for many reasons. So if you are someone who can take the vaccine, you're otherwise healthy, you should definitely go for it. Coming to the variants, very quickly about them. So I told you that RNA viruses have a tendency to mutate all the time. So you see in this picture on the right, this panel, there will be a lot of mutations happening all the time. Some of these mutations give the virus a survival advantage. So they either make it more transmissible, it can thrive for longer in a more number of people. So these mutations get selected. So this is again the theory of natural selection, and then they will replicate. So that is what we are seeing even with COVID. There are so many variants. All these blue dots, yellow dots are all different variants that are seen across the world. Only a few are variants of concern. So these are the variants of concern. I will come to the Indian variant also. So we have initially we had the UK variant, and then we had the South African variant. There is a lot of nomenclatural complexity to this. I will not go into them. It's not important for you. So I'll just call them by the country's name, even though it's not the best thing to do. So the UK variant, South African variant, Brazil variant, and then of course we had an initial Denmark variant, which was completely eradicated by culling of millions of mink. So this variation started much earlier, actually in February 2020. So whatever Indian epidemic started with this variant, D614G variant. So this had replaced the original Wuhan virus by making it more transmissible, very highly transmissible. And then the UK variant first appeared. The reason why this became a variant of concern is because the spike protein is slightly modified by this variation, by this mutation makes the spike protein slightly different in shape and in the way in which it interacts with the human body. And then we had the South African variant, which was initially confined to the Cape, the Eastern and Western Capes, but then it has been reported from several other countries now. So the possible impacts of these variants are that it can make them more transmissible or infectious, which is actually common to all these variants. Now we have seen all the variants are much more transmissible. What we have in India currently, which is responsible for more than half the cases, especially in Maharashtra, is a double mutant. It's a new mutant which has mutations both from the California variant and the UK variant, which is actually making it much more infectious also. So this is one of the reasons why we are seeing a second wave for sure. Does it cause more severe infections? Probably not. None of the variants that have been studied so far, even the Indian variant probably does not cause more severe disease. The reason why patients overwhelm hospitals is again the sheer total numbers. So many, you have 100 people getting severe infections compared to a total of 1,000, but now you have 10,000 infections, so 1,000 of them will get. So Delhi alone, if you take for example, so we know that 10% of infections will have severe disease needing hospitalization. So if out of 17,000 new cases in a day, 1,700 end up in hospitals, where is the space? So that basically it is the sheer size of the pandemic that is impacting healthcare facilities. Another problem with these variants is that sometimes they can escape the immunity provided by vaccination. So they may not be covered. They may be a completely new spike protein of the coronavirus, which makes it completely escape the immunity of the vaccine. So this is again being seen to a small extent with the South African and Brazil variants. It is again not 100%. UK variant has been shown to be neutralized by the vaccines definitely, but the South African and Brazil, there is definitely a problem even with Covishield. So right now in India, we don't have these two variants to a large extent. So vaccines in India still will be effective against all the wild type, all the viruses, all the virus types that are existing in India at the moment. So how can we reduce occurrence of these mutations? The only thing to do is to reduce transmission. So if you reduce total number of cases, the virus will not be able to replicate. So if it's not able to replicate, it cannot mutate. So basically that's all that you need to do. And as a country, with the infrastructure we have, we need to keep monitoring for these new mutations. So we have a consortium of labs, of about 10 labs in the country called the INSACOG, which do about 5% of all positives they sequence, and then they come out with this data. Quickly about some of the myths of vaccination and how we can address vaccine hesitancy. It's important to remember that immunizations throughout the history of mankind have been one of the two, that is safe drinking water and immunizations, have been the most important public health interventions in the history of mankind. They have been able to prevent disease and eradicate, for example, smallpox has been eradicated only because of vaccinations, and measles has been eliminated from most parts of the world only because of vaccinations. So this is what we need to remember, and we need to embrace the vaccines that are currently available and not fall prey to these false news that is circulating everywhere. So this was a survey which was done especially in the low socioeconomic strata countries. Why they did not want to take a vaccine was either they did not trust the vaccine, they did not believe that the virus exists, they are more concerned about the safety of the vaccine, they don't feel that they might get COVID-19, so they need not take the vaccine, or they did not have sufficient information to take a decision. So these are most common reasons that were given. Add to this a lot of the social media frenzy that is there related to safety, and of some of the myths that are circulating has actually led to a drop in the number of people accepting. Even in the UK and US, according to this survey, they saw about a 6% drop after they were fed all this false information. So there is a thing to remember that social media also makes a lot of money from this infodemic of spreading false information. So this was actually a paper in the Lancet Digital Health, which showed that these social media companies made billions of dollars just by spreading this nonsense. So it is not just the pharma companies that have a that have bad intentions. It is also social media. That's what you need to remember. You don't think that WhatsApp messages are free, so they all should be true. No, there is a big conspiracy behind these companies also, and they make a lot of money off of you when you trust these fake news outlets. So some of the myths that have been commonly alluded to. Can the coronavirus vaccine give me COVID? So usually the fever that follows vaccination is not COVID. And the reason why people get COVID even after the first dose is that first dose does not offer 100% protection. You have to wait till 2-3 weeks after the second dose to actually get the protection that you will be getting from the vaccine. So basically the vaccine will introduce a small part of the virus into your body and make it prepared to actually face the COVID-19. So again, this will not prevent, I told you even with the vaccine, the comparison table, that they are not 100% effective against mild or moderate disease. They may not even 100% protect from transmission, but it is still important that a large population gets the vaccine so that further transmission events are halted and you at least protect people from dying of COVID. So that is the main intention of vaccine, is to prevent deaths due to COVID. The fever post-vaccine is the flu. Some people think that the fever that you get post-vaccination is like a flu. Sometimes there can be even a sore throat. There may be an inflamed throat after the vaccination, but this is not the flu, right? This is just the body telling you that it has mounted an immune response to the vaccine. So it is not to be worried about. Right now the cases have come down, so I don't really need to worry about the disease anymore. Now, of course, this is no longer the question. We are seeing a huge surge. So there is no way that you should think that the pandemic is over and then you need not take the vaccine. If people think that they are naturally immune, they have very good nutrition and hygiene, they're very healthy, that's going to prevent me from getting the infection. That is again not true. When the virus actually first came, none of us had any immunity to this virus. There is no pre-existing or baseline immunity. It's absolutely new, and the immune system was entirely naive to this virus, which is the reason why it caused a pandemic in the first place. So it is important to stay healthy, definitely, to prevent serious infections, but being healthy is not going to prevent you from getting the infection in the first place. It will prevent you from getting very severe disease for sure. There was a recent study which showed that physical activity is directly related to good outcomes in case of COVID. But again, it's not going to prevent you from getting the infection and transmitting the infection. Again, this herd immunity thing. So 10 other people in my community are getting vaccinated. So probably I don't need to, because that herd immunity will protect me. It's not like that. Already children cannot get the vaccine. Pregnant women are not getting the vaccine. A lot of people cannot get the vaccine because the vaccine is probably not proven to be safe in those populations. So still we are left with only 70% of the population. So everyone that can actually get the vaccine should definitely go and get it. I told you this, it cannot happen. RNA vaccines do not alter your genetics. It is an absolutely false news that came from the social media. Blood clots to the vaccine. There is some fact to this. So this was reported in 2 papers in NEJM recently, where there was a case series of people who had clotting issues post the Oxford University vaccine, as well as more recently the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This was more commonly seen in younger women below the age of 30. So you see in this picture that if you want to compare the potential benefits versus the potential harms due to the vaccine, in the age group of 20 to 29, probably there is a concern that the Oxford University vaccine and the Johnson & Johnson, that's Covishield and J&J vaccines, may have some, there is maybe some truth to this, that there is some clotting issues that happen in these people. In the other age groups, the potential harms are almost negligible, 0.2, especially in the 60 to 69, the 40 plus age groups, that is 0.5, 0.4, 0.2, compared to the number of ICU admissions that the vaccine can actually prevent. So this is an absolute you can just see the size difference between these two. So at this point in India, the vaccines are being only given to 45 plus. So there is nothing to be worried about. In the future, if you are younger, if you are under the age of 30, you might want to choose one of the other vaccines if the option is given to you. Otherwise, all the vaccines that are available are absolutely safe, and the WHO does not recommend that you should not take any vaccine because of these issues that have been reported. There is no loss of fertility or sexual dysfunction with the COVID vaccines. Absolute nonsense. I won't even talk about it beyond that. Another myth is that Indians think that they are healthier somehow and they're not dying due to COVID more than other countries, and therefore they don't need to take vaccines. The reasons why we have seen a generally lower fatality rate overall compared to Western countries are probably that India has a younger population. So developed world has 30 to 40% of the population is above the age of 60 to 65, 70, whereas India has a much younger population. So 60 to 65% of the population is under the age of 35. So overall, the fatality has been less because the most commonly affected age group is the higher age group. And what we've seen in India, in fact, it is a 45 to 75 year age group that has died of COVID. So if you look at all the people who died of COVID last year, many of them belong to this age group of 45 to 75, especially with diabetes and hypertension, other comorbids. So this is the most unhealthy age group that we have in India compared to other countries. Other countries, mostly deaths have occurred in the 70 plus age group, whereas in India, it is this in this middle age, that is 45 to 75, that has been most affected. In India, generally, the people who end up to survive for beyond 70-75 are generally actually healthier than this middle age group who have comorbids like diabetes and hypertension. So if these factors are taken care of, so you take out the factor that is affecting the figure of the fatality, that is, if you consider that the younger population and the comorbids, etc., actually the fatality is no different in India compared to other countries. It's the same. It's the same severity. Your TB, BCG is not going to protect you from dying. So this is again a personal opinion. This is not. I believe that lockdowns are not really a viable option anymore. You can't rely on the government to have blanket lockdowns like we did last year and put the country back into an economic crisis that we had last year. What we need to do as law-abiding citizens is to prevent getting infected and prevent other people from getting infected by attitude change. We need to mask, we need to social distance, take up vaccines as much as possible. India as a country is actually doing much better than many other parts of the world in the total number of vaccines that are being administered in a day. So 3 million a day is the figure that is actually currently there. But of course, we are facing shortage now, which may squarely hit us in the face in a few weeks' time. But we need to continue the same pace of vaccine so that at least in a year or a year and a half, we will be able to vaccinate 70% of the population. That is the best shot that we have actually. So I think with that, I will end my presentation and we can immediately start taking questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks so much. That's a lot of insightful data from you, and we need even time for all the data that you've given to sink in. But the curious and the most interested of ours have already started posting questions, which I'm going to take you through. The first question, and another thing I would like to add is, like, we've crossed much over 500. I think we should have touched around 750 people today. So because of the sheer topicality of the subject and the concerns that are rising among the population right now. The first question I have for the day is the person who's anonymous has told, I was tested COVID positive on 15th of March. Please guide us. After how many days can I take a vaccine?
15th March 2021, I believe. So that must be correct. So usually, yeah. So usually there is a recommendation from the CDC for this. You can wait 90 days before you take the vaccine. If you've already been infected, you wait 90 days to take the vaccine. So 15th March means add 90 days to that. May June you can take.
I and my family members met a person at her residence last Sunday for about 2 hours. She has been tested positive on Wednesday night and is hospitalized now. We currently do not have any specific symptom. Do you suggest that we get tested? If yes, when?
Yes, so it seems to me that you have had a high risk exposure for 2 hours with someone who has already tested positive. The usual time that it takes for you to develop COVID is about median is around 1 week. So if since your exposure has been on Sunday, you probably wait a week. So maybe next Sunday or Monday, if you can get tested, it's good. All the while keep monitoring for symptoms and certainly quarantine. Don't go out and increase the exposure. So 1 week you can wait and get tested. Even after that, for a week, you need to observe to see if you're getting any symptoms. You need to be monitoring yourself for symptoms until then.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. The next question is, I have taken the first dose on 24th March and after that on 1st April, I was tested COVID positive. When should I have my second dose?
90 days. So 90 days from your diagnosis of COVID. Obviously, the first dose did not have enough time for you to take, for your body to take effect against COVID, because 24th and 1 is only 1 week apart. So you wait 90 days to take the second dose.
The next question, how reliable is a negative RT-PCR test result?
So it depends on the context. So overall, if you ask me for a figure, if there are 100 people with COVID, the PCR will pick up only 70% of them, only 70 of them. But it again depends on the context. If you are symptomatic in the first week of illness, especially in the first 3-4 days of illness, the chance that an RT-PCR will miss the diagnosis is very, very, very low. Like it's a symptomatic first 4 days of fever, it's almost 100%. But as time passes, or even a few days before the actual onset of symptoms. So if you've been exposed and you test yourself too early, 3 to 4 days after the exposure, the PCR obviously may not be able to pick up because it is still in a pre-symptomatic stage. So those factors need to be taken into account. If you are definitely symptomatic and the PCR has somehow missed it, then probably it's good to repeat the test.
Can we get infected after both the dose vaccinated? As one of my familiar person is known that after one vaccine dose, within 15 minutes met with a heart attack and passed away.
So yeah, I cannot comment on that one case because we are not obviously seen, and there could have been other factors. I mean, even without the vaccine, there would have been a chance for a cardiac arrest. Will 2 doses of the vaccine 100% prevent infection? No. So that is what the data, that's very clear. The idea of getting vaccinated is to prevent serious infections and prevent deaths due to COVID. So even after 2 weeks of the second dose, you may still get COVID, which is a very mild in nature. So it will still be very mild. If without a vaccine, you might have gotten more severe disease, but with the vaccine, it will be very mild. So that is the hope with vaccines. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from Mr. Pratap Reddy, who wants to know what are the key symptoms of COVID-19 disease.
The same symptoms that we saw last year. It is just like any other viral illness. You can have fever with chills, cough, sore throat, headaches, diarrhea also, and loss of smell has received a lot of attention. All these things can be there. Nothing new in the second wave as such, the same symptoms, or you need not have any symptoms also. Asymptomatic infections can happen. About 20 to 30% people may not have any infection, any symptoms. Just a high risk exposure history would have been there. So the same symptoms, there's nothing specific that will tell you it's COVID. In the setting of a pandemic, every fever is COVID. That's what basically the dictum is. So you definitely have to get yourself tested.
Okay. There's a question from Siva who says kids are also getting affected on a large proportion in the second wave. How to handle it since no vaccination process is there for them? Since we are only in the initial stage of creation of vaccine for the children.
Yeah, so that is something that is the hope for future. Moderna is one vaccine which is working on clinical trials for children also. As such, the vaccines, the make of the vaccines doesn't really pose higher risk for children. The only thing is that the initial clinical trials did not include children. So the clinical trials did not include children. There cannot be an indication for children. But Moderna has taken the lead, and there is a trial which has recruited children for the vaccine. Hopefully other vaccines will also follow suit, and soon we will have vaccines available for children also. So reason why this time we are seeing more children getting infected is that last time, as soon as the scare started, parents were really protective. All the children were only staying at home, not playing outside. But recently, before the second wave surge, schools had opened up, there was a lot of exposure that the children could have come into contact. So that is the reason why we're seeing more number of children. It's not that the virus is able to infect more children now, specifically. It's not like that.
Gayatri would like to know which is the better vaccine, Covaxin or Covishield?
Both good. Both are almost equally good. There's nothing to really compare in terms of safety and efficacy. Both are, whatever you can get your hands on, you should probably go ahead and get it. That's what I tell everybody. There's nothing to really. It's just that the Covaxin, the kind of the quantum of data that we have for Covaxin is a little less than Covishield. Otherwise, both are equally good.
Okay. Dr. Sunil would like to know that after the first dose of COVID, if contracted with COVID again and treated with remdesivir, is the second dose necessary? And if necessary, when should it be given?
Actually, remdesivir is, let's not bring remdesivir into the equation. So there are actually studies which show that for those who have been infected in the recent past, that is before 3 months of the first dose, one dose itself offers very good protection, because infection also gives you immunity, right? It gives you a good immune response, which is actually very good. And one dose of the vaccine is enough to boost the response of the infection. That is what many studies have shown, but we don't yet have a recommendation because it's not well studied. So probably theoretically one dose is also good enough for someone who has recovered from infection. But in your case, you're saying that you've received the first dose and then got COVID. Still, you would probably have to take the second dose after 90 days.
Another question from anonymous person. My RT-PCR was negative since in the last 2 weeks after close contact with COVID positive. However, I'm getting fever of 101 to 102 and cough daily evening after 6 to 7 p.m. This is happening for the last 4 days. I'm taking paracetamol and cough aid along with steam and kada and vitamin C. What could be happening with me?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite likely that you have COVID still. Like, you had a high risk exposure. I don't know exactly when you got tested. You've had these symptoms for the last 3-4 days. So irrespective of the test, you should still consider that you have COVID. Hopefully it is only a mild COVID from what you're describing to me. So isolate yourself for 10 days. Watch out for any worsening of symptoms. If you have any symptom worsening, definitely seek admission in a hospital. In terms of breathlessness, like if you have, you're not able to breathe as well as you could before, or if you have an oximeter at home, if you're measuring your oxygen levels coming down, falling below 90%, that's cause for concern. Otherwise, just self-isolate at home, consider that you have COVID, and do all the same precautions that you would otherwise, even if the test had turned positive.
Okay. Prahlad wants to know which is a more authenticated test to diagnose. Is it RT-PCR or HRCT?
So HRCT has unfortunately received too much attention. So HRCT is a radiological test. HRCT exposes you to radiation. The gold standard test is still RT-PCR, but for someone who is at higher risk of more severe COVID, the doctor might decide to do a HRCT also in addition. HRCT can in no way replace an RT-PCR. It is an add-on test to see what is the extent of damage that has happened to the lung. So HRCT, like I'm sure you know, it's like a more it gives you a better picture than an X-ray does. There will be a lot of sections or transverse sections to see what is the extent of involvement of the lung. So, but many people generally on their own, they get self-referral and go to standalone labs and get CTs done. It's probably a little overused at this point. There can be some non-specific changes on HRCT also that gets picked up. Artifacts also get picked up on radiology. So unless a doctor has advised it, keeping any of those other factors in mind, probably to avoid a CT is better. And it's not going to replace an RT-PCR.
Okay. The next is, can you get infected through food? Example, food deliveries where someone with COVID has cooked the food.
No. There's a very, very, very remote possibility because it has already stayed outside. So I told you it's only from a person that you can get COVID most of the time. Even if a COVID positive person has cooked the food has been cooked. Maybe there is some amount of handling of the food that has happened, but even then there would have been a lot of time difference from the time it came and then you get the food at home. So just take care of the packaging, maybe disinfect your hands, make sure that you handle the packaging safely, throw away the packaging, and once the food is there, you can consume it, no problem.
Yeah. The next question is from Anand. He is showing concern about taking Covishield because it has blood clotting, and he says that he's 47 and he's worried to take the vaccine. Except asthma, he does not have any other complications. Should he opt for Indian ICMR vaccine or is
Covaxin.
it okay?
So you can opt for either. At the age of 47, Covishield doesn't really have the clotting issue. So all the clotting disorders that have been reported are in, I told you, younger females. So females under the age of 30, this is a specific side effect being seen, and it's a very rare side effect. You have much more chance of getting severe COVID-19 than you have of getting a blood clot due to the vaccine. So you just have to weigh those two, and definitely at your age and with your comorbids, like you're saying, asthma, everything, you should definitely get either of the vaccine. If you prefer Covaxin because there are no such reports with Covaxin, it's entirely your choice. You can definitely go for either, but there's no contraindication for Covishield also. You can take both.
Okay. The next question is, I go for a morning walk without a mask. I cannot wear a mask and walk. Is it fine?
You can. Even I do it every day. You can definitely wear a mask and walk. It's just in your head. It's just a mental block that you need to come out of. Wear a more comfortable mask. You can wear a cloth mask and walk. That is okay. And if you don't want to wear a mask, if you're going really early in the morning where there are no people around, it's okay. You can take it down for some time. But if you're coming into a crowd, you're seeing 4 or 5 people standing there, better to bring it up. So you can at least do that. If not, better to not do away with the mask completely. You might be just getting into a crowd and someone coughs on your face. What will you do then, right? So you need to have a mask handy. If it's okay, you don't wear it the whole time. As long as there are no people around, it's okay. But then bring it up as soon as you see a person around you.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. This person has already taken the first dose of Covaxin. The question is, can he or she go for Sputnik instead of Covaxin?
We don't have data for those things. If you've taken 1 dose of Covaxin, it's better to take the second dose also the same. Otherwise, there is no boosting effect of Sputnik for Covaxin, and that kind of safety data has not yet been affirmed yet. So, until we know for sure that it is safe to mix and match, I would say you'd rather stick with Covaxin and, rest assured.
Okay.
I know that's very attractive. Even I have taken a certain vaccine and then now I know a certain other vaccine is coming. It's probably a better one, but suggest not to do it. Take the same vaccine that you took for the first dose. Take the same thing for the second one also, until we have more information available about this mix and match.
The next is AstraZeneca vaccine administration has been stopped in Denmark due to blood clot concerns. Have you come across such adverse incidents while administering the vaccine in India? The question is Tamil Nadu.
In India, there is no reports of such events happening at all. Mainly because I told you in India, we are only vaccinating people above the age of 45. We have not yet started vaccinating the younger people under 30. And this as a side effect has been seen in European countries where there is extensive vaccination across age groups. So the concern is probably only for the younger people under 30. We have, of course, vaccinated healthcare workers under the age of 30 also. But India, we have not reported any such events so far with Covishield.
Can cerebral palsy patients take COVID-19 vaccine?
Yes, there is no contraindication specifically for CP. For a lot of groups, it's actually good to take, especially people who are on cancer chemotherapy, people who have some other kind of immunosuppression. It's actually good to take the vaccine.
Some people get fever or body ache after the first or second dose, whereas some don't. Why is there a variation?
It's just, 5 of you would have gotten a common cold. Each one of you will have a different reaction. So the every body is different, right? The way you react to any foreign material is completely different from person to person. So there's nothing to explain why some people have fever, some people don't. It's just each person is different. You and I are completely different people, so the body also responds differently. In both cases, it is safe. There's no problem. Some people think that because they did not have a reaction to the vaccine, they don't have an immune response. That is also not true. Efficacy of the vaccine is not dependent on the symptoms that you get after a vaccination. It's more to do with the intramuscular injection, right? The injection goes into this deltoid muscle. There is some local inflammation that will happen. For some people, it's a little more exaggerated. So.
Okay. Yeah, that puts things in perspective, Doctor. The next is, what are the main symptoms of the new variant of COVID-19? Main reason for the faster spread than the earlier. Of course, you covered it in your presentation.
Yeah. Yes, the mutations, this particular, I mean, the second wave, why it's spreading faster is mainly human behavior. That is the main reason why it is spreading so much. Apart from that, the variants that are probably there even in India also have, I told you it kind of changes the spike protein a little bit, by which it is better able to attach to the human cells and therefore able to transmit more. So there are several postulates why the second wave is occurring. One of them is the variants and why the spike protein is able to infect more people more easily.
Yes, doctor. The Saravanan would like to know if COVID virus is airborne and does it spread through air?
It spreads for short distances in the air. That's what we call as droplet transmission. It's mainly droplets, which means that over short distances of 3 to 6 feet, it actually does spread through the air only from an infected person's cough or sneeze or speaking, right? So that is why we keep that 6 foot social distancing rule. Usually beyond 6 feet, it does not travel. It does not travel long distances in the air.
This person seems to be using a public transport to reach office, wears masks and sanitizes often. The question is, should there be any more precautions that needs to be done? Please advise.
It's okay as long as it's not too crowded. If it's a very crowded bus, I would still have some concern. I don't know how else to tell you which transport to take, but maybe avoid very crowded buses, even with masks. And your masking and sanitizing, that's very well and good. Make sure that you have it properly covered also. You should be mostly okay as long as it's not too crowded.
Okay, this is a slightly confusing question. It's you get infected once with COVID and say after 7 or 8 months, do you again get a chance of getting infected? And is there an infection possibility if you take the first dose of vaccine?
After an infection, first dose of vaccine after getting infected 8 months back. Yeah. So that really minimizes your chance of getting infected actually. So if you've been infected in the past and you have received one dose, the possibility of getting another infection is very low, but it's not zero. I cannot say that it is zero. There is a certain waning of immunity that happens after infection and even vaccination. Even with the vaccines that we have taken this year, I cannot tell you that in 2022, January, February, that vaccine is enough for me. I might need to take more boosters. But in an ideal scenario where everybody gets vaccinated very soon, the virus ceases to transmit. There is no more space left for the virus to transmit in that small given period of time. The pandemic is over, then we need not take vaccines. But as long as the pandemic lasts, we might have to take periodic boosters. That is the truth.
Thank you, Doctor. With that, I think we've just crossed a century of questions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we'll try to do justice in the next 10 minutes by covering the most important ones.
10 minutes. I think I actually have to head to another meeting. But, but if there is some way where we can collect questions, Chandrasekhar can share my email. I can respond to each of them, and I'm sure I'll be happy to take that later time.
How many more questions can you take in that case?
4 o'clock. I need to go actually.
All right, fine. I think in that sense we close the session, and we will reach out to you and individually get back to the people who have posed these questions. Of course, this is a record number of questions that we've received the last 32 odd weeks that we've conducted these sessions.
Right. So I'll really be happy to answer all of them if you can just put them in one document or something.
We'll club it all together and give it to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doctor. In fact, you have helped clarify doubts of over 700 people today, and more will be watching this recorded video on our intranet. So I'm sure that that will dispel a lot of myths and reinstate the facts, so that we all contribute our best from the Murugappa Group as employees in fighting this pandemic. So thanks once again, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Archana, we can go offline.